Ortlund usefully develops 4 tiers in his theological triage system. 1. Doctrines that are essential to the gospel. 2. Doctrines that are urgent for the health and practice of the church, such that Christians commonly divide denominationally over them. 3. Doctrines that are important for one branch of theology or another, but not such that they should lead to separation. 4. Doctrines that are unimportant to gospel witness and ministry collaboration. Of course, some believers distance themselves from such triage grids. If the Bible asserts something, they avow, it is God's truth and not to be relativized or declared more or less important than any other part of God's truth. Others resort to what might be called LCD theology, lowest common denominator theology. The question that interests them is this: what is the least that any person should believe and adhere to in order to be a Christian? Both of these strategies will readily dismiss all attempts at theological triage. It is precisely here that Ortlund is a helpful guide. He helpfully points out that Paul, to go no further, can designate certain doctrines as matters of first importance, 1 Corinthians chapter 15, verse 3, while other beliefs allow for difference of opinion, Romans chapter 14, verse 5. Certainly, when the apostle finds himself in different cultural settings, he feels free to emphasize slightly different things as he takes his audience into account. Compare his sermons in Acts chapter 13 and Acts chapter 17 respectively, one in a synagogue and one in the Areopagus. This book seeks to establish clear thinking about such questions. When it comes to concrete examples, Ortlund is less eager that you should agree with all his conclusions than that you learn how to think about the importance of theological triage. And this becomes all the more important when theological triage is overlaid with the challenges of cross-cultural communication. This book is a little exercise on how to read and use your Bible humbly, carefully, faithfully, and wisely, like workers who do not need to be ashamed. D.A. Carson. Introduction. There's an old saying, I can't remember where I heard it: there is no doctrine a fundamentalist won't fight over, and no doctrine a liberal will fight over. Strictly speaking, that's not quite fair to thoughtful liberals and fundamentalists. But we can probably recognize these two instincts. Most of us have a tendency in one direction or the other, to fight over doctrine too much or too little. This book is about finding the happy place between these two extremes, the place of wisdom, love, and courage that will best serve the church and advance the gospel in our fractured times. In other words, it's about finding the right hills to die on. Albert Mohler has developed a helpful metaphor for this idea: theological triage. Triage is essentially a system of prioritization. It is often used in medical contexts. For instance, if you are a doctor on the battlefield, you cannot treat every wounded soldier simultaneously, so you must develop a process to determine which injuries you treat first. Using the concept of triage in the context of theology assumes 2 things. First, doctrines have different kinds of importance. Some hills are worth dying on, others are not. As basic as this might seem, plenty of people, either in principle or in practice, deny this. More on that in a moment. Second, triage assumes that the needs are urgent. You can spend more time fixing a broken arm when no one is hemorrhaging 10 feet away. If you have neither a broken arm nor a dying man to attend to, you can give more attention to a chipped tooth or bad bruise. But the more demanding the issues, the more you have to make hard decisions. Similarly, if souls were not perishing, if our culture were not seeming to escalate into a whirlwind of confusion and outrage, if the church did not have so many languishing needs, I suppose if these were not the conditions we faced, we could do away with the